is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
The Dallas Cowboys select C.D. Lamb, wide receiver.
And now, your hosts, Dane Brugler, Jeff Kavanaugh, Kevin Turner, and Kyle Yeomans.
It is a wonderful Thursday here from the SWBC Virtual Mortgage Studios at the Star in Frisco as the Draft Show returns here on DallasCowboys.com as we will continue to break down the NFL Draft April 29th in Cleveland, Ohio, as we're now closing in on 60 days until the draft is finally here, and it is crunch time as the Senior Bowl's in the past. We're closing in on pro days, lots of pro days to get to, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit coming up here in the coming moments. But first, let me introduce the normal Thursday crew. We've got Dane Brugler from The Athletic, Jeff Kavanaugh, 105.3 The Fan, and the great Kevin KT Turner down the road. I'm Kyle Yeomans leading the way as always. Gentlemen, it's been a crazy week for a lot of you and for a lot of our listeners at home. First off, I want to take some time to say prayers out to everybody affected by the winter storm in Texas and even around the country. Wanted to just kind of give our thoughts and prayers your direction because it certainly has been a tough week. Jeff, you doing okay over there? I see the bookshelf is looking alive and well in the back. That's good.
Yeah, I have not had to sell the bookshelf, so that's really positive. I've been really fortunate. I have not lost power. I've decided it's because I'm about a 3-wood away from a fire station. So I have been very fortunate. My only mishap has been brought on myself when I thought I could do laundry and the drain was frozen. But now we got that handled. It's no problem. So I cannot complain. I have had it very, very easy.
KT, the same kind of thing with you? You've been doing all right this week?
Yeah, I've been good. I only lost power once for like 30 minutes. I keep thinking it's going to happen because somehow I escaped and didn't lose power. And I feel terrible even talking about it because...
electricity guilt. I have it too.
Yeah, it's terrible. And you know what? It's not as bad as not having power. So, yeah. I mean, I guess there's a part of me that should just say, count your blessings. But there's another part of me that I just feel terrible for everyone. So I don't know.
Dang,
figure it out, Encore.
Yeah, it really has been an interesting week for sure in Texas. But Dane, you're up in Ohio. How has it been up on your neck of the woods?
Well, I mean, we've got snow everywhere, but we're used to this. We expect this every winter. So it's freezing outside. My wife's a third grade teacher, so every night she's crossing her fingers that no school the next day. But it's a little different situation for us up here. It's the same kind of cold. And you guys are just kind of getting a taste of, unfortunately, what our weather is for a couple months during the winter months.
Yeah, we hate it down here for sure. And by the way, everybody continue to stay safe. And we're going to give you a little bit of an escape from that because instead of having the freezing cold temperature, we're going to give you blistering hot draft takes here over the next hour. How about that? How about that? It's going to be real hot up in here. Okay.
It's going to be so hot. I'm thinking about doing a segment with my shirt off.
Ooh. Okay. I mean, do what you want to do. I'm not going to stop you, Jeff. But let's go ahead and go into a hot topic among Cowboys fans really throughout the course of the draft process, and that's cornerback. Because I feel like lately we've talked a lot about the defensive tackles. We talk about offensive tackle, even a little bit of edge rusher and linebacker. But I don't know if we necessarily hit the corners as much as we did when we first started the show because back in the first couple episodes, it was almost a foregone conclusion corner was going to be the pick. Now, that still could be the case. Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, J.C. Horn are all right up at the top of the draft. But there's some really good corners throughout the top 10 of this draft, Dane. And I know whenever it comes to you and you're looking at this, I just want to kind of get your input. Now that we're post-Senior Bowl, we're getting into these pro days, has there been any big shift among the top 10 corners and some guys that could potentially be wearing a star on the side of their helmet?
It's going to be a very tumultuous, maybe that's not the right word, a lot of varied opinions going from team to team evaluator to evaluator when you look at this corner class. There's just so many different types of corners. I think the top two are widely believed to be the first two corners off the board, being Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain. But then after that, there's a lot of different opinions on what order 3 through 12 is. I mean, it's crazy the amount of different opinions. And I think you look at pass rushers like that this year, wide receiver after the top 3 is kind of like that. Corner, there's just a lot of different types of corners based off of scheme, based off of maybe what size, speed, ball skills, whatever trait that you prefer, kind of being the strength of your corners. There's going to be different guys that you're going to want. So don't expect a clean, order from everybody in terms of the how these guys are going to be drafted. For me, example, Greg Newsome out of Northwestern. He's my number 4 corner in this draft. Wow. I finished his report earlier this week, and I'm trying to place him. I'm like, oh, he's better than him. I think he's better than him. And I settled on him at number 4, and I think there's a good chance he's going to end as my cornerback 4 after Farley, Surtain, J.C. Horn, and then Newsome. And there's so much to like about him when you factor in the ball skills, you factor in his coverage ability, his ability. He's so intelligent with the way he plays. He allowed only 10 completions this year. Only 1 was over 10 yards. There's just a lot to like about him as a corner, as an ascending corner who's getting better and better. So I'm very high on Newsome. And then after that, there's a lot of intrigue. The Georgia corners, for example. I know, Jeff's not as high in the Georgia corners, where I'm starting to, I'm leaning towards Stokes a little bit, just because there's so much working in his favor. Tyson Campbell bothers me because he just can't find the football downfield, and that's something that really bothers me as a corner. And the more I stack up these corners, the more I really, remember that and how that hurts him. So there's so many different directions we can go with this cornerback class. I'm eager to get KT and Jeff's input to this as well.
So can I just follow up, because the Georgia cornerback thing it's funny that you mentioned that, because I literally flipped them yesterday. Yeah. I have Stokes ahead of Campbell too, and the reason that I did that is, as I'm initially doing a position group, and I've watched like 15, 16 corners now, as I'm initially doing it, I'll watch a guy and I'll just throw him into like the round group where I think, and then I'll watch the next guy and I'll throw him in. And then as there's more and more guys in each round, I'm just kind of gut feeling like, all right, he goes there, he goes there. And then eventually what I do is I go back to my notes, and I'll find that there are guys that you liked more when you just read the notes, and there's guys that you liked less when you just read back through it, and you're like, okay, so those are in the wrong order based on my own words, so let's get this fixed. The interesting thing about the Georgia guys is there's so many ways to evaluate this. Dane will tell you that it's traits over production, but production's a thing too. And on the Georgia corners, did you know, here's a fun did you know game, Tyson Campbell gave up more yards in the Alabama game than Eric Stokes gave up all year.
Yeah. Wow.
So, there is at some point where you go, okay, Tyson Campbell is a little bit taller, he might be a little more athletic, and so okay, there's some traits there, but Stokes has been a better player than him their entire career. So, I went through and kind of reordered some things, and I still have them both outside of my top 10, but I did talk to a guy who does some evaluating for NFL teams last night that has Stokes as a top 5 corner, that loves him. And that just goes to Dane's point. These guys are going to be all over the place. Neither one of them is in my top 10 currently, and that's the way. And Dane's guy Newsome at Northwestern, he's my 10th corner, and I love him. And he's my 10th corner. I have 10 guys that I think are worthy of being picked in the top 2 rounds. So that's where I am with the corner. And my number 1 corner, Caleb Farley, when I went back and looked at the notes, I don't know if he belongs as my number 1 corner.
Wow.
Whoa.
I really don't. My notes on him are all about potential. He doesn't play much press man coverage. I don't think that his tape is great in man coverage, period. It's a lot of, these athletic traits and the ball production numbers and what could he be, as opposed to going through Surtain's notes and I'm like, that's pretty much all positive. J.C. Horn, pretty much all positive. Whereas Farley, it's like, hey, here's what he could be. And so I'm going to have to think long and hard about that at the very top of the draft. So, yeah, it's it's a really fun group, and I think it's a really deep and really good group. And you could find, I think, a really good player at 44, maybe even in the third round. But yes, everyone's going to be varied, and I know that I am varied from what a lot of people think.
There's no need to make any hot chocolate after those hot takes from Jeff.
Shirt's coming off, baby!
Leave it on. I think the demographic is mostly male, although shout out to our female listeners of the draft show.
And males who like males.
Eric Stokes for me is my cornerback 4. I have 2 first-round graded corners, Farley and then Surtain. I am with you on that Surtain might feel a little bit safer. I want to go to Eric Stokes because I think, and I don't know what the targets are compared to him and Campbell, who it feels like watching the tape, Campbell was definitely targeted more, like no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah, by far.
Stokes only allowed 16 receptions this year. The longest reception he gave up was 18 yards. And to me, I think Eric Stokes is fast. Like, everyone talks about how athletic Tyson Campbell is, and you can see it. Mm-hmm. You can see the fluidity of Tyson Campbell. But Eric Stokes is not – it's not like he's going to go run – like, Eric Stokes has got a good chance to run in the 4.4s. Like, the straight line speed is there.
He might run the fastest 40 in this draft.
Wow.
They're both. Campbell and
fast.
Stokes, I believe, are both 100 and 200 meter state champions in high school. They can both fly.
Stokes was more of a track guy in high school. He has some state titles in Georgia. So yeah, they're both going to run really, really well.
The thing about Stokes, and it's completely different from Tyson Campbell, is you can just kind of sense a little more feel of anticipating the route that the wide receiver is going to run, and understanding this receiver is about to break inside, and he gets a step ahead, and he's carrying the wide receiver inside, and just little things like that are a little more nuanced. And like, the cornerback is a nuanced position, and it's okay to just put athletic guys out there sometimes, but that doesn't mean that they have a better feel for the position, and you can easily see that with Eric Stokes. So he's been a top 5 corner for me this entire process, and that hasn't changed at all, and I feel really good about that. From a Cowboys perspective, does he get to your second-round pick at pick number 44? Probably not. I personally don't feel like he makes it that far, but we'll see what NFL teams feel like in this kind of odd year of evaluating players.
Well, and Dane, you pulling up Eric Stokes and saying that he has the potential of running the quickest 40 in the draft, I mean, that reminds me of a conversation we've had on the show previously about the Cowboys defense and about how this defense just isn't fast enough. And it seems like that. You can see it on tape. The defense is by far not fast enough to keep up with the defenses that we saw that made deep playoff runs. Is Eric Stokes that guy that defensively could potentially up the defensive speed, or are there other guys littered throughout this group that could potentially add to that as well?
Yeah, if you're looking for pure speed, then, Stokes needs to be near the top of your list. He was a 10.39 guy in the 100 meters in Georgia. That was a classification record for him. So speed is not a question with him. Straight line speed, he's got an explosive trigger, and the speed shows up recovery speed as well. So he can regain positioning and make plays. So there's a lot when you look at Stokes and you see how long he is, you see the speed, you hear his coaches say things like he's coachable, he's intelligent. He only gave up 3 touchdowns the last 3 years at Georgia. So there's a lot of things in Eric Stokes' favor, which is why he's up there in the top 5 or 6 corners for me. I'm still working through exactly where, but he might end up 5 right behind Newsome. So there's a lot going for him. I think one of the toughest corners in terms of just pegging where he's going to go, and then his projection is going to be Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky, who he does not have a big sample size. He was a backup as a freshman at LSU, transferred, so he sat out 2019, became a starter at Kentucky, and he started 9 games. So we've got basically a 9-game sample size from him, and there's a lot of really good stuff on there. You see the athleticism, you see his ability to pattern match. He's rarely out of phase because he's such a natural athlete. He's fluid. He's got that hip flip that you want, very loose, very sudden. Big time athlete, but again, the sample size is not there. You see some undisciplined tendencies, and then there's just some off-field stuff. He obviously fizzled out pretty quickly at LSU. The Kentucky coaches basically told him, hey, just leave, just go opt out, because he was really not putting in any effort towards the end of the season. He was just kind of showing up, and so the coaches basically pushed him out the door. So there's a lot of things with Kelvin Joseph that are get you excited, but there are also some red flags there that teams have to work through. He's going to go somewhere top 50, top 60 because the talent is just too good. But teams are going to have to do a little more homework on him just to figure out exactly what's going on with him. Can you trust him as a professional? What's going to happen when he gets that contract? Things like that. So Kelvin Joseph's going to be really interesting throughout this process.
Do you think he's a guy that can make it to 44? I know you just said it's really tough to tab where he's going to end up going, but I wanted to throw him in there.
No, he could go 25. He could go 55. I mean, it could, because again, there's a lot of he will be not for everybody. A lot of teams will say, we don't want the headache. We'll take our chances on this guy because, like we've been mentioning, all these different corners. There's so many of them, so you don't have to necessarily take a chance on a Kelvin Joseph. You look at a guy like Marcus Peters, who he's got his own different set of circumstances, but he's a Pro Bowl corner. He's on his third team already, and he's been in the league 4 or 5 years. So there's some teams that are going to be willing to put up with some of the stuff where other teams will not. So he's just going to be a really interesting guy to track throughout the process.
KT, is there a guy in the back in day 2, early day 3 realm, a third or fourth round pick? Of course, the Cowboys picked corner Reggie Robinson last year in the 4th round. Do you think they could do that again? Because I know you tabbed Reggie Robinson from very early on in the draft show last year. I want you to do it again for me. I want you to find a guy in that late day 2, early day 3 realm that the Cowboys could be interested in.
Get him active this time.
Yeah, it's very frustrating that Reggie Robinson couldn't get on the field last year. That's very frustrating. And I guess, to be fair, we don't know the reasons why. He could have been practicing bad, but that's neither here nor there. You're talking about day 2. I want to say, let's call it late day 2. Maybe a guy that you maybe drafted in the 4th round that maybe had a 3rd round grade on, something like that. I think Paulson Adebo from Stanford is very interesting. And he's a guy who I knew the name of coming from a couple years ago because he had a good year and he's like, okay, he's going to come out, and he decided to go back to Stanford. Now, he set 2020 out because of COVID. But we've got the length, you've got the ball skills you want. You really got good hands. He used to be a wide receiver, so that's not a big deal. A lot of these guys used to be a wide receiver or have experience playing wide receiver. But there's some catches he makes on interceptions where you're like, whoa, what a catch. But he's physical at the line of scrimmage. I think he's a pretty good tackler, willing to come up and hit and things like that. And has the size you're looking for and an aggressive mindset that. He's got the traits of your stereotypical, big cornerback. He's not a twitchy guy. And I think that's the big thing that kind of makes you stop and pause a little bit when you're watching Adebo. To me, I didn't see the most fluid hips, but, he can sometimes get off balance if he's going up against a shifty guy. But, the league also has a bunch of big kind of stiff wide receivers, and it's all about who can go make a play out of contested catch and things like that. And I think he's pretty good. I think he's pretty good in zone coverage as well. So he's a guy that I like. It's not a guy that I love, but he's a guy that I like. And there may be some value there because, again, he set 2020 out. 4 interceptions in 2018 and 2019. He's got a good production track record. He's got the length, and that's probably his best trait right there, his length and his ball skills. I think you just have to ask how good of an athlete is he compared to someone else, and maybe what you're looking for at the cornerback position.
He would also be a Dallas Day guy. He's a product out of Mansfield.
Yeah.
He went to Mansfield High School.
There's no such thing, though, is there?
I don't think so. I don't know if that's official or not.
No visits.
Yeah, but I'm right there with you. I think there's not supposed to be a Dallas Day, but He would be a Dallas Day guy if there were such a thing. Now, Jeff, give me one of those names as well.
Well, for me, Adebo, I'd had somebody give me the proper pronunciation, but I have him as cornerback 8, and I have him in the 2nd round. I like him even more than people who like him, I guess, and I think he's a better athlete than a lot are giving him credit for. I just think he's kind of he looks kind of like one of those what do you call that, high booty, when you got kind of the long legs and your butt's up high there.
High cut.
Yeah, so, if a guy, makes a great break on an in or out cut, it's going to take him just a little bit just because his legs are longer and he's got to get going. But I think he accelerates. I think he can change direction. I like him a lot. Let's see. If you're talking about like 3rd, 4th round, I guess my under-the-radar guys that I like are Shakur Brown at Michigan State and Thomas Graham at Michigan. But, man, I like Adebo better because you're talking about, I think, a scheme fit for what we think the Cowboys are going to run. What we think the Cowboys are going to do is run a bunch of cover 3. And in scenarios like that, I probably need to get more names in there because the names I really like to fit that are Kelvin Joseph, Ifeatu Melifonwu at Syracuse, Newsome at Northwestern, because I think those are guys that I've seen play a lot of mixture between man coverage and cover 3 zone where you have a deep third, and Adebo as well. So I think those are the names that are most interesting to me. Is at 44. If I heard the name Kelvin Joseph, Paulson Adebo, Melifonwu, or Newsome, I think that those are good players that are deserving of being picked there, and I think they really fit what we believe the Cowboys are going to do defensively.
That's with Adebo, the ball instincts, it's undeniable. I mean, 34 passes defense in 21 starts is just a remarkable ratio, and that's something that teams are going to care about. So, yeah, Adebo is really, really interesting, and I mean, you guys, I think, summed them up perfectly. He's leggy, and so he's going to false step here and there, but he can, he's got quick feet. I think he can settle, redirect, do these things. One other name that I think should stay on the radar for the Cowboys scheme and maybe what they're looking for, maybe in that 4th round, would be Keith Taylor out of Washington. 6'2.5", 190 pounds. I think he fits that scheme really well. And then also Benjamin St-Juste from Minnesota, a Canadian who, another tall, leggy corner who has a lot of traits that are appealing. And both those guys help themselves at the Senior Bowl and have a chance to, be in the early day 3 range, maybe even push for more.
I love it. There's a lot of guys that the Cowboys could potentially look at because they double-dipped last year at corner, and like we talked about already, Reggie Robinson barely could get onto the field. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was one place you could double-dip again in this draft. It's probably at the cornerback spot. So looking at both those first-round corners and even some of those back-end day 2, day 3 guys are going to be crucial for the Cowboys whenever they start making those decisions. But when we come back here on the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show presented by Miller Lite, we're going to go into some Twitter on the 20. We'll be right back after the break.
Sometimes nothing beats a classic. Miller Lite, the original light beer, brewed with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories, 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
Hey, Cowboys fans, if you're thinking about attending a game this season, visit cowboystravel.com to book your travel package today. Stay at the team hotel, have dinner with a Cowboys legend, and experience AT&T Stadium's exclusive VIP Owners Club. Also, tour the Star, get autographs from your favorite players, and talk X's and O's with me, Mickey Spagnola. The official travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys will take care of all your travel needs. Visit cowboystravel.com.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Sometimes nothing beats a classic. Miller Lite, the original light beer, brewed with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories, 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
On to segment number 2 here of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. As always, presented by Miller Lite. It's time now for some Twitter on the 20. There it goes. As always, Chris Beam doing fantastic work in the back. And, well, guys, we've got some really good ones to get to. We'll start things off with Coop Gordon on Twitter. He hit me up and said, how does Oklahoma edge rusher Ronnie Perkins fit into what Dan Quinn is trying to do in Dallas? Also, where do you think he will be drafted, because he was dominant at OU last year? KT, any thoughts on Mr. Ronnie Perkins?
Yeah, Ronnie Perkins is an interesting cat right there. I almost think what Dane said on that, he could go 25, he could go 55. Maybe I would extend that up to 75 maybe. I mean, for me, I've got a third-round grade on him, but he is a really good player. And if you talk to Oklahoma people, they will tell you that they were a way worse defense without him than with him. He had consistent production. I think he's the definition of solid. 5.5 sacks, then 6 sacks, and then 5.5 sacks in his 3 years at OU. Good hands player, good upper body strength, really good get off and, snap anticipation, explodes off the line of scrimmage. I wouldn't call him stiff, but he's definitely not a Gumby. He's not the most bendy guy, but, he's a strong enough guy, and he'll set the edge against the run and things like that. He's not the longest guy. I have him at 6'3", 247, but, I would say he plays like a 265 or 275-pound guy. You look at the tape, you look at his body, and you go, is that really 245 pounds? You do have a question with a drug test. This is in 2019. He missed the Peach Bowl with 5 other players, including the running back Ramondre Stevenson. Tested positive for a little THC, but
Oh,
hey,
no!
Hey, I'm not letting that. I'm kind of ruling that. I'm getting a free pass there, right? So Perkins is an interesting name. I don't know. Like, keeping this from a Cowboys perspective, I'm not sure I'm totally interested in drafting him at pick 44, but you start talking about if he's a guy who's there in the 3rd round, then maybe. But I think you're going to see him slide up. I think people are going to start paying a little more attention to Ronnie Perkins, and wouldn't surprise me at all if he's taken in the first 2 rounds.
Dane?
Yeah, I think I graded him as a 3rd. I think he takes advantage of that slanting defensive system they use there at Oklahoma, and that really helped boost his production. But, I agree with a lot of what KT said. I think he's got heavy hands. He attacks the chest of blockers. He can stick, stab, keep distance. I don't know how instinctive he is as a pass rusher. That bothered me a little bit. You don't see a rush plan. You don't see an arsenal of moves. And so, it's going to take a little bit of development there. But I like the way that he'll use his forward lean to use his length, to use his power. He's very balanced in his movement, so he can get himself free from blocks, make plays. I see a potential starter, either in a 4-3 and a 3-4. It's just, obviously the failed drug test, you have to figure out what's going on there. It sounds like a situation where he's really well liked in that locker room. It's just you have to vet his off-field decision making. So a third, I grade him as a 3rd, but if he ended up going top 50, wouldn't be a complete shock.
All right, Jeff, I've got a really hot take topic for you on this next Twitter on the 20 question. So this is all for you. I'm excited for this answer. So Chris Staff on Twitter said, first off, he hopes everybody is safe and well. And the question is, let's assume, and by assume, pretty much hope, that Trey Lance is available at number 10. Of course, the quarterback out of North Dakota State. Which team from 12 to 25 is most likely to trade up to pick number 10 with the Cowboys for him, and what would be a realistic trade scenario? Or do the Cowboys take him, Mr. Jeff Kavanaugh?
I can do this off the top of my head because I've played with this too many times on simulators. I've gone down to around 20 and then been really mad at myself for going down to 20 because all the names I wanted disappeared. So to me, the dream would be you go to 15 and you get 15 and 46 from New England. And since they're taking a quarterback, you may even be able to sneak out a little more. But, and I'm going to take this back to what we were talking about with the cornerback class. I'm going to have them in a certain order. But if you told me J.C. Horn's going to have a better career than Caleb Farley, I'd go, all right, I believe you. And if you told me pick another one and it's going to go that way, I'd go, okay, I believe you. So that would kind of be the dream to me, I think, is you go to 15, you pick up J.C. Horn, and now I got a corner that I feel about as good as I would have felt with either of the other top 2 corners, and I've got an additional pick right there in the middle of the second round. That's the dream trade of the quarterback, 15 and 46. And if you can get more than that, great. But if not, I'm J.C. Horning this thing all the way to the bank.
I like that idea. I think that would be ideal for the Cowboys, honestly, if they didn't feel comfortable with one of those top 2 corners like a Surtain or a Farley. But kind of sticking with this, and you talked about trading back into the 20s. If the Cowboys were to trade back into the 20s, Travis Ferguson on Twitter said, which later first, early second round offensive tackle prospect would you like better if the Cowboys were to trade back to about the 20 mark? Is it Jalen Mayfield, Christian Darrisaw, Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame, AVT, or Alex Leatherwood? Out of those guys, Dane, which one would you like more if the Cowboys were to potentially trade back and have that nightmare scenario that Jeff just kind of talked about, but still have a chance at a young tackle?
For me, no question to be Darrisaw out of that group. I just think he's a guy that's, the body control, the feet that he has, the technique, the torque, the way he shows up both in pass protection and the run game. He can manhandle guys in front of him. So there's a lot to like about Christian Darrisaw, and if I have a chance at him in the first, I'm feeling good about that, especially after a trade down. It's a really interesting tackle group. Like for me, Jalen Mayfield, I really like him. I think he's a better guard. Like Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State, really like him. I do question will he be able to hold up at left tackle. And so there's kind of questions with each one of these guys, and that's why we're talking about them as late ones, not early ones.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really interesting group. And real quick, to go back to what Jeff was just talking about, I'm going to press you on this, Jeff. Why J.C. Horn over one of the linebackers? Let's say none of the linebackers were drafted up to that point. So you have your choice of any of the linebackers at 15. Are you still going Horn over any one of those guys? Plus, when you consider you're almost guaranteed one of Stokes, Newsome, Joseph, all those corners we talked about in the first segment. There's a very, very high chance at least one of them's going to be there for you at 44. Does that influence your decision at all at number 15?
I don't trust Parsons. Look, here's my problem with linebacker. Tell me what they're doing with the other 2 on the roster. Because in this scenario, I think you're talking about, for me, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Nick Bolton, Micah Parsons, all first-round guys. J.C. Horn, first-round guy. So I like them all. I'll figure out how to stack them later. But to me, I think cornerback is the more valuable position. So if I have a choice between guys that I consider close, I would err on the side of corner anyway. And that's without even factoring in that the Cowboys currently are going to run out Trevon Diggs, Anthony Brown, and so like at linebacker, I'd have to create a hole to go fill that hole, which I don't mind doing with at least one of them on the roster, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I feel safer with J.C. Horn than any linebacker in this draft. And I love Koramoah, but I'm also projecting a move to will linebacker for a guy who didn't play in the box linebacker all that often at Notre Dame.
Dan?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's it's when you talk about these linebackers. I mean, I still like Parsons. I mean, I think as long as I'm comfortable with the off-field stuff, which is something we're going to keep working through. As long as we're comfortable with his maturity, I think he's the best linebacker in this class. But I still really like Koramoah, and it's just you have to have a plan for him. Because he's not a true safety, he's not a true linebacker. You're kind of doing a little bit of a mix, and whether that means having a designated nickel position for him or whatever you're doing, if you have a plan, yeah, he's worth that pick. He's so explosive. I think at 15, I'm, as long as the current situation on the roster is figured out and we have a hole there, we have a chance to upgrade and we take advantage of it, I think I'm leaning towards one of those linebackers. And then, not now, it's because of those linebackers, not because of the depth of corner, but that doesn't hurt as well, knowing that I feel really good about my second round corner options at 44. So, it's this linebacker group is interesting. I'm still a big believer in Parsons' talent. There's so much there that is high level stuff, and as long as you're comfortable with the person, I feel really good about the player.
KT, I'm interested in your opinion on these linebackers and what the Cowboys would maybe potentially lean on doing, because I like what Jeff said about creating that hole, and I think we all kind of look at it and say 54 is the hole that they would have to create.
Whoa!
Smith. I'm throwing it out there. I don't want to be a coward. Wow. I'm going to talk about who we're going to replace if we draft a player.
I love Jalen.
It's 54.
I love him.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure that's not who you were talking about. But KT, any potential there with the Cowboys and linebacker with the prospects that are at hand?
I thought you were talking about Joe Thomas not coming back.
I thought it was Sean Lee. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. On that right there, again, I still have a second round grade on J.C. Horn. He's my third corner, but I have a pretty big drop off between Farley, Surtain, and J.C. Horn. But in this scenario, it's important to remember that you have pick 15, pick 44, and pick 46. So I am a little more comfortable taking a linebacker there if it's the guy I like. We've heard the Cowboys are interested in Zaven Collins, or at least like Zaven Collins. Mm-hmm. I don't have him graded above, Micah Parsons. Koromoa is my favorite player in the draft overall. I'm not saying it's my number one ranked player in the draft, but that's my favorite player in the draft. Just I love watching him play. And I personally on my board would have him graded a little bit higher than Micah Parsons, because we do need to find out a little more. And also the instincts of Micah Parsons are sometimes questionable, and it bothers me a little bit. I hate having the idea of, okay, if I draft this guy, what do I do with him? Well, you're a smart NFL coach. You figure out what to do with him, right? So I'm taking the player I like, and if Koromoa is there, and I'm taking him at 15, that's easy. I wouldn't take Koromoa over Farley or Surtain on this team, unless some roster moves are made, and then we can kind of go back and reevaluate that. So that's where I'm at. I'm also a fan of taking linebackers late. I think you can get linebacking help on day 3. I think, and also there's a guy I need to ask you about, Dane, because I don't have a ton of Michigan tape, unfortunately. Hey, Tell me about Cameron McGrone. And I know he's only got 16 games on his ledger, but Cameron McGrone, from the little bit that I've seen on BlimpCam, because I can't find any All-22 in Michigan for some reason, and maybe we have some and I just missed it. Tell me about Cameron McGrone, the linebacker from Michigan, because he looks fun.
Yeah, he's really, really, really fast. I mean, he can run. He filled the shoes of Devin Bush after he left Michigan. And McGrone stepped in and made a pretty quick impact as a sophomore. Biggest worry with him might be the injuries. He had an ACL in high school, and then had a pretty bad knee injury late this past year against Rutgers. So the health of his knee is going to be pretty important. But this is a guy that he can run all over. The athleticism, the instincts are fantastic. If he doesn't play out in front, then he usually gets in trouble because he doesn't have necessarily the play strength that you want. So I think those issues are going to hurt him. So you factor in the inexperience, the injuries. That we're talking more a day 3 flyer, and you kind of hope he stays healthy and can get on the field. But the speed and his ability to trust his vision, which allows him to play even faster, is really, really intriguing. I just hope he can stay on the field.
Now, kind of going back to these offensive tackles that we were talking about a little bit earlier, we had multiple Twitter on the 20 questions asking about later round offensive tackles, rather. Connor Livesay, who we had some trouble with last time he asked the question.
He screwed up the whole segment.
Completely messed it all up. I have checked. This guy is indeed in the draft. But where is Deontay Smith, the East Carolina offensive tackle, going to end up? He said he doesn't love his tape. His traits, his versatility, and his Senior Bowl were all tremendous, though. So where does he make it? Does he make it to the fourth for Dallas? And Dane, are there any other offensive tackles late in the draft that the Cowboys could potentially get for some offensive line depth?
Well, yeah, this offensive tackle class is it's loaded.
Stacked.
Last year we had 5 go in the top 20, and it was very top heavy. This year it's we're going to have 2, maybe we get to 3 around there in the top 20, but it stretches. And I don't know how we're going to fit all these tackles in the top 100 picks in the top 3 rounds. Because even after you get past Penny Sewell and Rashawn Slater and Christian Darrisaw and Jenkins, you've got guys like Sam Cosmi and Liam Eichenberg. I really like James Hudson at Cincinnati. Dylan Radins at North Dakota State. He's somewhere on day 2. Walker Little from Stanford. We can't forget about him. He's been out of sight, out of mind after he had a really nice 2018 season, hurt 2019, and then opted out this past year. Brady Christensen at BYU. A little bit of an older player, but he's a really solid left tackle. So I just mentioned those are 10 names right there, and all 10 could go in the top 100 picks. And so Deontay Smith, I think you could make a case, has top 100 traits because as Connor said, you like 6'5", 300 pounds, and 35 and a quarter inch arms, really quick feet. And during Senior Bowl practices, he held up versus power. He held versus quickness. Really helped himself. And so I think he's probably early day 3, like somewhere in the 4th. But it's more because some of these tackles are going to have to fall out of the top 100, and he might be one of them. So the tape isn't amazing, but the foundational traits are there. You're going to take a chance on traits at the tackle position. Deontay Smith is how it looks. And so if we're looking for other guys that could possibly be fits later on, Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa is a developmental guy. He's got a lot of tools to work with. Larry Borum from Missouri is a redshirt junior who came out who's really raw, but he's got some talent. If you can get him in the 5th or 6th round, I think that's the type of guy you'd like to develop. So this tackle class is loaded from the top to bottom. It stretches really well, and so you can feel good about getting a tackle at different points of the draft.
I want to add one more name just because I watched him last night, and this is from Jeff's Oklahoma Sooners, 5th round, Adrian Ely, offensive tackle. I just like the way that he moved a little bit in the run blocking game. Just like right tackle, and hey man, all the way over there hitting his targets on the left side of the field. I like to see my big guys moving around like that. So again, 5th round, not like in love or anything, but just a name, throwing it out there.
He's got starting potential. Yeah, that's a good name.
You're throwing out offensive tackle names. How about we throw out some quarterback names, Kevin KT Turner? Because at this very moment, the Cowboys have not signed Dak Prescott, and Dane Brugler is releasing his top 10 quarterbacks on The Athletic. When we come back on the DallasCowboys.com draft show, I'm just going to read the back half of the headline. Is Zach Wilson of BYU ahead of Trevor Lawrence in mock draft updates and buzz? We're going to talk about it when we come back on the other side of the break here on the Draft Show presented by Miller Lite.
No way.
Sometimes nothing beats a classic. Miller Lite, the original light beer, brewed with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories, 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Honey, big news.
Gary, are you okay?
Oh, I'm not Gary anymore. I'm Jackie Flash.
What?
See, I want the latest smartphone, but the best deals are only for new customers. So, to get a new customer deal, I changed my name to Jackie Flash.
Okay, but the best smartphone deals at AT&T are for everyone, new and existing customers.
That's huge. Then guess who's getting a deal?
Is it Jackie Flash?
Jackie Flash.
It's not complicated. At AT&T, our best smartphone deals are for everyone. Restrictions apply. Visit att.com for details.
Before there was a draft, you could size up a cowboy by 3 simple factors: the crease in his hat, the bend of his brim, and his unbending attitude. A man Stetson didn't just protect him from what life threw at him, it projected a rugged, unstoppable spirit. Stetson hats are still American-made with pride right here in Texas. They're still the unofficial crown of all self-respecting cowboys, and Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Find a retailer nearest you at stetson.com/cowboys.
Sometimes nothing beats a classic. Miller Lite, the original light beer, brewed with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories, 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Final segment here of the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Kyle Yeomans alongside Dane Brugler, Kevin KT Turner, and Jeff Cavanaugh. And good thing we're talking about quarterbacks because there's some breaking news straight from the Twitter of Adam Schefter. Philadelphia has agreed to trade quarterback Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts in exchange for a 2021 third-round pick and conditional 2022 second-round pick that could turn into a first, league sources tell Adam Schefter. So, with that being said, we were going to talk about these quarterbacks, but let's talk about kind of instant reaction from what was a former number 2 overall pick in the draft out of North Dakota State. Of course, there's a North Dakota State quarterback that's going to be taken in the top 10 this year, seemingly, in Trey Lance. But, Jeff, what are your thoughts overall about the Philadelphia trade as Carson Wentz is now a Colt?
I mean, the Carson Wentz part of it, I don't know how that's going to play out because this year was a collapse that it's just so weird to see a guy who had shown a decent amount of ability to suddenly look like he couldn't play the position. And to blame it on the circumstances or the coaching or whatever, I think is garbage because they replaced him with a guy who's not an NFL quarterback, I don't think, and the team got better. So I don't know how to play out for Wentz. I think I look at that as like the Eagles' best chance to be a good team was for Carson Wentz to re-find it. Because now I don't believe that they have an NFL starter on their roster at quarterback. So I guess my first thought is always don't let them take a quarterback, don't let them take a quarterback, don't let them take a quarterback. I just hope that the Eagles take a receiver or a corner at 6 and think that Jalen Hurts is the answer because I think if they do that, they're not a threat at all.
Yeah.
Well, you don't draft a quarterback in the second round unless you really like him, right? I mean, It was a fascinating pick when they made it, and it's even more fascinating now with everything going on. I love this for the Colts, to be honest with you. I mean, you're not giving up a lot. You're a third and a conditional 2. Carson Wentz has plenty of talent. It's not a talent question, and we have to remember he's being reunited with Frank Reich, who when he was with the Eagles, that's what helped unlock a lot of that talent for Carson Wentz. And so reuniting those two, it's a perfect fit for Wentz. If he's going to get his mojo back, if he's going to figure it out, it's going to happen with Indianapolis. And for the Colts, obviously Phillip Rivers is retired. Okay, you need to do something at quarterback. They went after Stafford. They've been looking at their quarterback options. They're sitting there at 21 in the draft. They don't feel great about being able to trade up and get one of these rookie quarterbacks. They're a win now team. So they didn't overpay for Carson Wentz. I mean, I think when you're talking about the potential hit rate here, I think it's a fair deal. So I like it for both sides. The Carson Wentz side and the Colts. What this could be for them.
Go for it, KT.
I would say it's the best possible fit for Carson Wentz because the roster does matter. And I'm not a huge Wentz fan, but the roster matters. And Brad Ballard is going to give you a better roster than what you were getting in Philadelphia at the time. We've seen that. And also, just for a fun fact, from 2009 to 2016, of the 22 quarterbacks selected in the first round, none of them were with their team that drafted them. So,
wow, that's unbelievable.
That's pretty fantastic. Good fun fact there, KT. I like it.
I stole it from someone on Twitter, so don't. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Kind of going off of what Dane was talking about a minute ago, and KT, or even Jeff rather, whenever you kind of talked about how this affects the Cowboys, it affects the Cowboys in a couple of ways. One was, like you said, is Philadelphia really going to be a threat? Are they going to take a quarterback with that 6th overall pick? That's one of the big questions. The second one is it takes a team away from you that may have wanted to trade up at 10 and potentially get a quarterback, because the Colts aren't going to go trade for a quarterback at this point, or at least seemingly that's the case. They're not going to try and trade from 21 up to 10. So there's two ways that it's affected. The third one is, does this give you pause? Like you said, KT, that's a long stretch of time where that quarterback has not been with their team after being selected in the first round. And of course, with the Dak Prescott situation, with these quarterbacks on the board, Dane put out his top 10 quarterbacks and top 10 prospects ranked again. That'll continue to change by everybody's means as the year goes along. However, does this give you pause any, Dane, about taking a quarterback at 10 if the Cowboys don't get Dak Prescott under contract?
I mean, I can't envision a scenario where that's the case. I mean, if you're the Cowboys, you do your due diligence on these quarterbacks. You just never know. There's always a chance, and so you do your due diligence and see if you fall in love with any of these guys. You're not even sure who's going to be there at 10. There's a favorable chance that none of these, the top 4 quarterbacks will even be there for you. So it's a really interesting, pecking order with these, the quarterbacks after Lawrence. Some will say that Zach Wilson maybe has a chance to go above Lawrence, and that's get out of here. Come on, it's not happening. Trevor Lawrence is going number 1. He'd be number 1 in a lot. He would have been number 1 last year over Burrow. He'd be going number 1 over a lot of other in a lot of other draft classes. I trust me. No one. I've been on Zach Wilson for a while. And saying he was the number 2 guy this year, but he's the number 2 guy. He's not pushing for 1. It's just people are kind of running out of things to talk about when we talk about that. So this with Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, do any of those 3 really get the Cowboys excited at all? And I still have a hard time envisioning this roster without Dak Prescott. But they got to do their due diligence and figure these quarterbacks out.
Jeff?
I think if they get to the draft and they haven't done a long-term deal with Dak Prescott, how do I say it without name calling? If you don't consider or pick a quarterback, I have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the only way you're doing that is, I don't know how you're assuming that, we're going to get a deal done. Because he's come so far in the process towards free agency that he's on the doorstep to it. So if you don't have something done by the time you draft and you don't figure out who's going to be your next quarterback, what would it be? Just blind ego that Jerry and or Steven would be like, hey, don't worry, he won't leave us, he doesn't want to. I don't know how you couldn't be in panic mode if Dak's not signed by the draft, because he's you're not tagging a guy for $52 or $54 million or whatever a year from now, and you're just going to trust that a quarterback hitting free agency in his prime is going to take whatever you offer him instead of whatever unrestricted free agency offers him, which will probably be some sort of NFL record.
Yep.
I think it's negligence if you don't pick a quarterback at 10 if you don't have a long-term deal done with Dak.
KT?
I would agree. A quick housekeeping. That's a first-round pick for the Eagles if Carson Wentz plays 75% of his snaps next year. That 22 pick would become a first-round pick for the Eagles. Or if the Colts make the playoffs and he plays 70% of his snaps. So it's basically all about his health. For me, look, you got to get a deal done with Dak, and that's it. There's the end of story. Because if you don't get that done, that's negligence before whatever happens at the draft. Get it done. It's that simple. But I actually got to make sure he's healthy and all that stuff. So Jeff covered what I feel about that.
Sure. Now, kind of talking about some of these mid-round prospects, Dane, tell me about Davis Mills, because you kind of named them in order. We'll go through it one more time. Trevor Lawrence is number 1. Zach Wilson, BYU, is number 2. Number 3 is Justin Fields out of Ohio State. Number 4, Trey Lance, North Dakota State, who we've talked about already. Mac Jones is the 5th quarterback And then at 6 is Davis Mills out of Stanford, 6'4", 255 pounds. Tell me about what Davis Mills brings to the table and why he's above guys like an Ian Book and a Kyle Trask and a Kellen Mond.
He's really, really interesting as a former 5-star guy who just couldn't stay on the field due to injuries. And so I think the health of his left knee is going to be really important just to, make sure that he can stay on the field and be healthy. But when he's out there, he looks really, really, really intriguing. You've got a guy that can throw a touch in anticipation. He can throw to all 3 levels. He's got a big, loose body type. It almost brings back just the way he, not comparing them as players, but just the way he moves in that Stanford uniform. You see Andrew Luck out there with just the movements, because he's big and he's loose. And so I think he throws to the middle of the field really well, maybe the best middle of the field thrower in this draft. And so I think there's a lot that's going for him. It's just, can he stay on the field? And he needs time to develop. He's still figuring out the throws that he should and shouldn't make. So there's some development needed there. But if I am looking for that developmental quarterback in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, this is the guy. This is one of the few quarterbacks in this class that I think has future starting potential, where, Kyle Trask, good quarterback, but to me, he's a career backup. Ian Book, I like him, but he's backup material. Mills is the one guy outside the first 2 rounds that I think could maybe actually become an NFL starter if he develops in some certain areas.
KT, anything about Davis Mills?
No, I haven't watched him yet because I hate quarterbacks.
I agree with KT.
Are there any quarterbacks that you guys have watched?
What we talked about. If the Cowboys in the quarterback situation, if you don't get your guy at 10, this isn't one of those drafts where, maybe you take a flyer on a quarterback and, there's not many options in terms of developmental guys. If you're looking for, if you're trying to find a quarterback in this draft who's going to, start games for you down the road, you got to take him at 10. This draft class just doesn't have a lot of developmental options that you feel strongly about, that could be potential starters.
It's interesting to think about because the Cowboys will have to do that. Have you guys watched, in terms of KT and Jeff, have you watched the top 6 quarterbacks or top 5 quarterbacks at all? Or are you still not even to that point yet? Are you into panic/preparation mode for Dak Prescott not being available?
Great question, Kyle. I've watched 113 defensive prospects. I've watched 7 offensive prospects. So I hate
Are they all offensive tackles?
1, 2, 3 of them are. Yeah. I've watched these quarterbacks play live. That's where I am with these quarterbacks. It's my form of silent protest to try to get this Dak deal done.
Okay.
I've watched the top 5 quarterbacks, and I have them in the same order as Dane does, except I would flip. Well, no, I don't have them close to the same order as Dane does. It's Trevor Lawrence. My second one is Trey Lance, then Zach Wilson, then Justin Fields. Jeff brought up something to me one night.
Boy, we are really disrespecting Justin Fields, and I can't wait for him to be really good in the NFL.
All right, we'll go.
Why are we disrespecting him?
Yeah.
Because KT is throwing in a dude who hands the ball off twice for every time that he throws, that played at North Dakota State over an Ohio State monster who lived up to everything he was supposed to be in college as one of the highest recruits of all time. Justin Fields has been nothing but be a stud, and now we're just going to throw in Mitch Trubisky in front of him, and we're just going to throw in anybody we can find we like their traits? Come on, man.
People get so upset when Justin Fields isn't the number 2 quarterback or even the number 3 quarterback, and I don't get it. Like, he's good, but, so is Trey Lance, so is Zach Wilson. Like, I don't know why we're disrespecting Justin Fields just because he's not a top 2 quarterback in this class. He's really good. There's a lot of things to like about Justin Fields, but there's a lot of question marks too there. I mean, it's a tough position to evaluate. Obviously, there's so many variables, and with Fields, when you really study his tape, watch the Northwestern game, and you really start like, why is he making that throw? Why is he locked onto this read? He won't even look at other guys. I mean, there are just so many things that make you go crazy when you watch him. That it's easy to like him, but there's also reasons why there's question marks there. There's concern there, and so it's a really interesting group of quarterbacks that everyone's got different orders.
Watch the Nebraska game, too. It's same type of feel with the Northwestern game.
You're right, KT. He should have gone to Southern Alabama, had a good year, and he'd be QB2 for you. I got it. Okay.
We got a guy running wide open in the back of the end zone of the Nebraska game, and Justin Fields is looking at the ground, and his wide receivers freaking out on him like all of Kirk Cousins' wide receivers do. I like Justin Fields fine. I think a lot of people watched him play against Clemson live and think he's God, and that's just not the case. Like, he's fine. He's good. And I get the Trey Lance. I understand being skeptical. I was going to bring this up, though, Jeff. Jeff and I went and had some cold Miller Lights the other night at the bar. Because we've been known to do that. We were double masking and all that stuff, of course.
Good.
And Jeff threw out the whole Mac Jones thing. He's like, with this offense, Mac Jones, kind of just distribute the ball. I don't know if that's an opinion you want to bring to the draft show, Jeff, and I know you're not talking about taking him at 10, but you had a good point. Like, if you just imagine that the Cowboys wide receivers are the Alabama wide receivers, and you can just be a point guard and distribute. I thought your point was fine. I thought your point was okay.
I'm just trying to stir you guys up and get you guys fired up on a Thursday, because I haven't even studied the guys. I've just watched them all live.
I'm already drinking.
But Mac Jones can read a football field and deliver an accurate ball with a chance for yak. That sounds pretty good in Dallas.
Yeah, I like that. He's another guy that's easy to like because, he's accurate. He can anticipate. It's just you have to be okay with a very average athlete who has a very average arm when things aren't right on time. So, if he's in the right offense, he can be a winner in this league. It's a fascinating group of quarterbacks. They all bring something different to the table.
One of my favorite parts of the draft show is getting Dane Brugler a little bit riled up on one of the rankings back and forth between Justin Fields and Trey Lance. And Jeff did a fantastic job of doing that.
Especially by someone who hasn't even studied them.
Hasn't even gone through it. Oh, it's even better. It makes it even better.
Hey, I live in Ohio, so trust me, Ohio State fans are not happy with me when they have not been happy with me for months after I put Zach Wilson at number 2 back in the fall. So I've received a lot of it over the past few months.
Now I've got a mental image of Dane going to the grocery store and having dirty looks from draft fans across the aisle as they wear Ohio State Buckeye gear. I think that's something that would definitely happen. Go read Dane's top 10 quarterbacks for the 2021 NFL Draft. It's on The Athletic. Great work as always, Dane, and we can't wait to go through some of these different positions along the way. But that's going to do it for us here on the Draft Show, presented by Miller Lite. Everybody continue to stay safe out there. We'll continue to thaw out and be back on Tuesday for the draft show and have a lot of fun with these guys. Maybe even have a double show on Tuesday. We'll see how things turn out and how that ends up shaking. But that's going to do it for us. For Chris Beam in the back, for our friend KT Turner, for Dane Brugler, and for Jeff Cavanaugh, I'm Kyle Yeomans. That's going to do it for us. We'll talk to you next week here on the Draft Show.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!